It will surprise most skeptics that James Randi is not the first magician to offer an unwinnable cash prize in order to gain self-serving publicity. Far from it. He is only a pale imitator of a line of magicians doing this. The magician's publicity generation, by a constant fraudulent accusation of fraud toward psychics, was devised by a highly skilled magician, obviously psychic himself. This is his story. And skeptics should well take note of this historic continuing repetition of a free publicity gimmick over 100 years by a number of magicians. Joseph Dunninger, 1892 to 1975, New York, USA. Joseph Dunninger, the mastermind, whose mental wizardry has baffled scientists and psychologists throughout the world, is a native New Yorker, born just before the turn of the century, and reared in the heart of the city. In the young Joseph there was awakened a yearning towards magic feats even at the age of 5, when he showed a marked ability at sleight of hand. His parents encouraged this novelty, much amused they were at the dexterity in simple palming tricks. Self-taught, Dunninger soon had a remarkable repertoire of necromancy. His childhood pastime earned him an invitation to appear before a Masonic club at the age of 7, where he was billed as Master Joseph Dunninger, child magician. It was at this time that he caused some wonderment among his school teachers. Master Joseph did not seem to be an extra brilliant pupil, but he invariably got all his arithmetic problems correct. Could it be that he copied the answers from bright children seated near him? His seating place in the classroom was frequently changed, but still Joseph's papers were marked 100%. Dunninger explains it now. You see, I just couldn't get the wrong answer. I didn't have to work the problems out. The bright children in the classroom just sent me thought waves, and consequently I got everything right. By the time that Dunninger was 16, he was an adult magician, with an enviable reputation, and appeared for a year at the famous Eden Museum, in 23rd Street. The boy Dunninger outmastered many of the most prominent prestidigitators of the day, and this launched him on a vaudeville tour. It was during this tour that he developed the astounding stunt of reading the minds of members of his audiences. For many years actors had presented such an illusion through the means of code messages between an assistant in the audience and the thought reader on stage. Dunninger used no assistance, and has never found it necessary to do so. In fact, he has a standing offer of $10,000 to anyone who can prove that he uses Confederate source stooges. Dunninger often says he could raise that offer to $100,000. No one will ever collect it, because he does not need assistance. Does this sound familiar, dear online skeptics, today? Dunninger headlined throughout the Keith Orpheum circuit, and was much in demand for private entertainment. At the age of 17 he was invited to perform at the home of Theodore Roosevelt in Oyster Bay, and at the home of the inventor Thomas A. Edison, both of whom were avid admirers of his mysticism. It was during this association that Dunninger developed some of the remarkable experiments that he uses in his performance today. His ability to read thoughts amazed the great Harry Houdini, and Howard Thurston went to great length in his search for the secret of Dunninger's mental wizardry. It was in this association that Dunninger took up his campaign of illusion-busting waged against fraudulent mediums, who have grown rich by falsification of seances that are designed to make people believe that word can come back from the spirit world. Dunninger used no assistance. In an act of inspired marketing, Dunninger offered $10,000 to anyone who could prove that he uses stooges, Confederates, or assistants of any kind. Dunninger said on many occasions that he could raise the offer to $100,000 because no one would ever collect it. He didn't need assistance to read thoughts. With such an act and such a challenge, Dunninger was soon headlining the circuit, and was very much in demand for private performances. Through the Scientific American magazine and the Universal Council for Psychic Research, Dunninger has offered $10,000 to any medium who can produce by psychic or supernatural means any physical phenomena that he cannot reproduce by natural means, or explain in convincing materialistic terms, i.e. simple language. So here we have a genuine psychic magician posing as an adversary and humiliator, an exposer of other psychics. What a clever misdirection! He has offered that amount of money to anyone who, with Astrade, can disclose the translation of secret code messages entrusted to him by the late Harry Houdini and Thomas A. Edison, both of whom wanted to investigate the possibilities of communication with spirits. Dunninger has also offered $10,000 to anyone who can introduce to him a real, house-haunting ghost. Needless to say, Dunninger never did pay out that money. Sound familiar? Well, for one thing, it would stop the free publicity machine, like that, by paying out. Most of the big-time vaudeville houses in the country boasted of having Dunninger on their stages in those days. Before long his single became a troupe of 50, with Dunninger, the mastermind of mental mystery, presenting a full evening's entertainment which included all manner of amazing illusions. Many of the acts he created in the repertoire of magicians now appearing before the public today. It is said that Dunninger has created more illusions than any other inventor of this type of entertainment now alive. He has toured the world east and west, reading the thoughts of princes, Pope Pius XII, and had been invited to the White House 6 times for presidential parties, at which times he read the minds of the presidents. When commercial radio started, Dunninger was the first paid entertainer to go on the air. His air debut was in a demonstration of hypnosis by radio. He was then heard in the role of a psychic detective, but neither of these features caught on. It was Daniel S. Hill, vice president and director of the popular division of the National Concert and Artists Corporation, who successfully evolved the Dunninger radio formula, thought reading. The idea quickly caught the favor of Phillips Carlin, vice president of the Blue Network, and on September 12, 1943, Dunninger's first broadcast as Dunninger the Mastermind was produced. Dunninger is now the sensation of the airwaves. Fan mail pours in, people clamor for tickets to the broadcast. When television started proving itself to be a popular form of entertainment, Dunninger was there. He altered his act to fit the format of a television show. Amazingly, his series appeared on all the networks at different times. In the 1940s, a poll showed that his voice was more recognizable than that of the president's. As brilliant as he was at performing, Dunninger proved the genius in marketing himself. To keep himself in the public eye, he wrote articles for magazines for both laymen and magicians. Soon the Dunninger byline was carried in such popular magazines as Time, Life, Look, Reader's Digest, Vanity Fair, Science and Invention, True Detective, and Sphinx. Every article brought letters from readers, evoking more interest, and therefore more articles. And it all paid off. His books were bestsellers in weeks. He commanded huge sums for personal appearances. He packed theaters from coast to coast. At his peak, during the 1940s and 1950s, the public could not get enough of the mastermind. It's of note that Dunninger, perhaps because of his phony war against fraudulent mediums, never claimed supernatural or psychic powers in his thought reading. He never even claimed to be a mind reader. Simply lying as magicians do. In performance, Dunninger referred to his ability as telesthesia, an impression received by a sense organ, but not a usual sense organ, and sometimes received from a distance. He described the process simply: you pick up a vivid impression from another mind and others follow, or suggest themselves. But it isn't mind reading, it is thought reading. BS rebranding for brand separation, that's all. When a series of such thought impressions come in fairly close in succession, it takes on the semblance of mind reading, though if you check back, you may find that you have added links of your own making, just as you might piece together the fragments of a dream to form a waking continuity. Spin doctoring Bala here, fraudulent denial, describing obvious links between his mind and that of stranger subjects, as only apparent, and we are laughing out loud. What about his school teachers? Dunninger was a master of his craft, possessed of a thorough knowledge of his art. When describing the necessary techniques for a successful blindfold drive, Dunninger noted, any competent performer should know how to size up a committee and handle them accordingly. Otherwise he shouldn't be posing as a mentalist. While the extent of Dunninger's mental capabilities were always the subject of skeptical analysis, his capability to understand human reactions was beyond question. Dunninger operated on the assumption that people have a tendency to believe almost anything if they are so inclined. He was careful in the selection of participants in his tests, and he employed a sort of mental misdirection. He suggested constraints on the tests he performed that seemed to prevent deception, but in reality allowed for it. He explained why one impromptu test works so well. I stressed as absolute precautions the very factors that were making the result possible. Dunninger considered mentalists halfway between magicians and mediums. Some mentalists, he said, rely greatly on magical methods, while others attempt actual tests in ESP. However far the pendulum swings, a capable mentalist will come through with results that a dyed-in-the-wool magician could never touch, because a mentalist plays hunches and realizes how often they may come through. And a mentalist doesn't have to advertise perfect results. Dunninger himself only claimed 90% accuracy. So dear online skeptic, would you dedicate your personal life to supporting and spreading Dunninger's career publicity, and do it all for free? When it's obvious he is perpetrating quite some fraud by being psychic himself and denying it for profit. His teachers figured it out he was psychic. What would you prefer to believe, his teachers, who were honest and validated his ability, or later his own self-publicity denials and fraudulent accusations of fraud against other psychics? Houdini copied his successful scam, posting an unwinnable prize, making fraudulent claims of fraud against psychics, etc., and admitted that he cheated to make genuine psychics look bad to augment his own prestige. It's essentially morally criminal behavior, but it's so entertaining, right? Dear skeptic, would you devote your life to supplying free support and publicity to a stage entertainer like Houdini? And would you believe every word these magicians say, and never question it, knowing full well they publicly admit to lying about a good many things? Would you still applaud them, taking their word as gospel? Vast numbers of online pseudoskeptics, defined in Wiki, today, in lockstep, do all of the above for James Randi. Parroting his magician's stage lines as true facts, while he openly admits to lying in his book, Flim Flam, and he vows to never pay out there, etc. It's so familiar. Dunninger all over again, by a very pale imitator. Are you happy to be an unwitting dupe, providing for lifetime support, with religious zeal, to a dishonest stage entertainer? Emulating their onstage behavior, at your own personal level, in your daily life. It's not okay to say yes to that, because, what would you think of yourself, for doing this? Or another person like you, another skeptic? Would you employ such a dishonest person in your shop? On the till. Would you trust anyone else, with your precious money, who militantly advocates this magician's kind of dishonest behavior? Another skeptic. Trust them with a gun? Your car? Your credit card number? Your bank account details? Could you pass a job interview militantly advocating the magician's dishonest battle cry? Who would hire you? It's not practical, dear skeptic, or realistic, to attempt to emulate these stage magicians' behavior in your daily life, as so many attempt to do, online. It's a disaster. Fraudulently accusing others of fraud. Start with your mother. Try it on the boss at work. Try making friends that way. And practicing this socially abrasive conduct daily on the net is simply feeble-minded, dear skeptics. Magicians are entertainers. You are not, dear skeptic. And it's different. There are no rules for stage magicians. But civilized behavior, man-in-the-street social rules, are the most productive for you, dear skeptic. It's common sense. Suggestion. Become a collector of useful information. A folder on your desktop. Try being kind to somebody online. A scientific experiment for you. It starts with giving information help or support to others when you know something they don't on the net. Flick them a link or a JPEG or something. Do it daily. The payback can be awesome.